The great ones, they're different. They really are. Not better, just different. Sure, there's a physical power, a mental strength, a complex but resolute constitution too. There's a whole lot more than just the measurables. That's something else, that intangible. It separates us from them. Welcome to the Legends series on Andy Raymond Unfiltered. A one-club guy, he wouldn't have it any other way. Loyal, decent, so talented too, and just Penrith, through and through. But who is John Cartwright?
Mate, I'm a boy from the western suburbs of Sydney. Grew up in a family of 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. Mum and dad, both hard-working, gave everything for their kids. Grew up playing rugby league in the winter and cricket in the summer. Wasn't very good at school because I spent too much time playing cricket and rugby league, but you know, I couldn't have asked for a better childhood, mate. We didn't have a lot, but all I remember was the fun times. You know, the neighbourhood kids getting together and doing the things that I just spoke about. So yeah, wouldn't change it for anything.
Your childhood was heavily linked with the Penrith Panthers, the whole Cartwright family. Where did the link begin?
Dad, it's funny because I think now Jed's gone from Penrith. It's the first decade since the 40s that it hasn't been a Cartwright at Penrith. So
wow.
Dad was involved through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Myself, Dave and Clive and Michael were involved through the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Bryce was there in 2010.
Yep.
Jed was there from 10 to 20. So probably the first year since the 40s that we haven't had a Cartwright at Penrith. So thought about that on the way here. You know, it's a pretty rare record, I would
Amazing.
think. But it started with Dad. You know, I was born in '65. Penrith came in '67.
Yep.
You know, I was the 4th child. Mum was busy raising the 4 kids, so I was the lucky one. The other boys were at school and my sister, so I got to go to work with Dad. And then my first memories ever roll around the floor in his office, sitting on the sitting on the tractor with him, mowing the fields at Penrith Park. You know, going to the game, sliding down the hill on the cardboard, going to try and steal the corner post after the game.
Yep.
And you know, those days you could run on the field after the game, so you got to touch the players, and the players didn't mind that at all. It was yeah, like I said, mate, I had probably the perfect childhood for someone who loved rugby league.
In the mid-70s, as a kid at Penrith, you would have wanted to have been tough and fast to get the corner post.
You were, but unfortunately, mate, there wasn't a lot of people at the games then. The Panthers struggled in the early years, and yeah, it was not very often did I have to fight too much to get the corner post.
1985, you played 3 first-grade games after making your debut. A tall, gangly piece you were back then. What do you remember of that day?
Mate, I remember I was 90 kilograms ring and wet, so
Wow.
I was the same height. So I ended up playing most of my career about 106 to 110. You know, so to say I was a string bean would put it nicely, I suppose. I distinctly remember Tim Sheens calling me in on the Thursday night. I got a late call up. There was a midweek game on the Wednesday, and we got a few injuries, and I got called out of the under-23s to play against North Sydney at Penrith Park. And the thing I remember was that North Sydney pack had a bloke named Steve Mayo, Don McKinnon, and Mark Graham. You know, and they were one big side, North. Yep. You know, so it was something that that was playing on my mind going into the game. I'd never, you know, I'd had a half a year of under 23s, a couple of reserve grade games, and it was pretty young in them days to make your debut at 20 years of age. So. Nervous as hell, but had a great coach in Tim Sheens. So if for any young fella coming through and had aspirations to play rugby league at the highest level, I couldn't think of a better coach. You know, he was very level-headed, very cool, very He made sure he wouldn't have picked me if he didn't think I was ready. He oversaw the preparation of a lot of the young kids that went on to that 91 Premiership side. They all came through the care of Tim Sheens, and he. I remember he laced my boots up for me. I couldn't put the laces in my boots. I was shaking too much, so he
really?
100%. He laced my boots up. Timmy was a funny character. He always thought outside the square, you know. So, of course, I was a big, tall guy. He thought my ankles would be vulnerable, so he used to make me wear those big ankle boots that...
Oh, yeah.
So
that is old school.
Yeah, he got Adidas to send up a special pair of ankle boots. So if you wore them these days, I'm sure that you'd cop a roasting from your mates. But, he laced the boots up. And just having him around was, it was probably just the comfort. I was still nervous as hell, but it was a comforting thought to know that he thought I'd done enough work to be there, and he wouldn't have picked me if I wasn't.
A debut against a guy like Mark Graham, for me, the benchmark of toughness on and off the field, and I think a guy that doesn't get the recognition that he probably deserves all these years later.
No, 100%. He probably because the poor old Bears struggled, for whatever reason. They got close on occasions, but even before they got close, they really struggled to make an impact in the competition, whether it was a cultural thing or, I'm not sure. But whenever Mark Graham played for the New Zealanders, that's where he made his reputation. He was one of the best forwards in the world. He never let his country down, and he would never let North Sydney down either. It was just sometimes you're at a club that gets a run like that, and it's really hard to break the mould.
In '86, you became a regular. You scored your first try. It's 35 years later. Can you recall the try?
86. I think you got me, mate. I should remember that. I'm a football nerd. It's, 86. Timmy Sheens was coaching. No, you got me, mate. Was it Cronulla?
I'm not sure. I thought you would be able to. I thought every footballer would be able to remember.
I know. I'm surprised.
Try.
I think I remember every other try I scored apart from that one. I know we beat Cronulla at Penrith by about 50 one day. I would have been disappointed if I didn't score a try out of that. Sure.
It had been a really tough few years at Penrith, but the club was growing. It was progressing. Could you feel a certain momentum at the club, even though it didn't happen immediately?
Mate, being young, you never really thought about it. We had a good time there under. Timmy took a side of pretty much no names, but with a tough old head in Roy Simmons and a future star in Greg Alexander, and just built the side around a willing bunch of locals. He put a lot of faith into that. And then I suppose the first sign of it that I really felt it was when Ron Willie came and they brought Peter Kelly and Chris Mortimer to the club. We had, like I said, Royce was the most competitive and probably the toughest individual I've ever seen. I probably took him for granted a little bit because I knew him so well, and I come through my junior years with him, and I admired him. Don't get me wrong, but when they brought Kelly and Mortimer in, the guys at Canterbury. During my from when I first started in the mid '80s, they just had an aura about them. You talk about sides today, physically bashing sides. Canterbury used to win games strictly on the back of, and they prided themselves on bashing the shit out of you.
That was the Dogs of War, wasn't it?
They were. There was a game that people used to always talk about. They played Wests on a Monday night, and they just totally annihilated them physically. It was almost brutal in how they attacked the game, and they ended up winning by 50-odd-0. And people spoke about that game for years and years. I remember sitting at home, knowing you had to play Canterbury one day, going, "Oh my God," it was just a brutal assault.
Yeah.
So to get Kelly and Mortimer on board, and they didn't accept losing. There probably was a little bit of that about that at Penrith. Where because we'd struggled for so long, if we got close, it was. And subconsciously, you can sometimes think like that. But to add those two guys in, and if we lost a game, they just got the shits, and they wouldn't wear it. And when they came in '89, in '88, we were super competitive. We were very unlucky in '88 not to go through. It was a top 5 in them days, and we got beaten a playoff, and the Tigers went on to make the grand final that year. '89, we went through to we come in the top 3, and they were there in '90 when we made the grand final. So really critical signings in what shaped the club. From being a side that had potential, but never really turned it into anything. Those 2 guys came right at the right time. We had a young group around us, and we learned a hell of a lot from them.
The veterans are the benchmark. They set the standard, not only on the football field, more so on the training paddock. Peter Kelly, Chris Mortimer did that. Does that theory still hold weight?
I think without doubt, mate. I think you can't put a price on experience, but I think you can put a price on inexperience. You don't see many inexperienced sides consistently compete week to week, and that means they struggle to play semi-final football. And if they do, they generally go out the back door.
Yeah.
The senior guys are the ones, they're the glue that holds everything together when everything's going south. So getting that, getting off topic a bit, but just the balance of your roster and getting your salary cap right is so critical these days. You can make just one little error, it can really cost you when the big games come around.
Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal. You became an integral part of the Panthers lineup. You were awarded in '89 with the Sky Blue jersey, your first one. How did you find out you'd made the side?
Yeah, that's a story in itself, mate. We played City Country on the Saturday at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And I was in the City first, so you had the City Origin, then the City first. So I played in the City first, and you played against a full country team, so all boys from the country. And I only played half a game, but I come on. I had a, don't mind saying, I had a really good game. Things went my way, I was in the right place. I set up a couple of tries, and I was just the country boys were getting tired, towards the end of the game, and I really enjoyed the experience, and I ended up having a pretty good game. And then we jumped on Mark Guy and myself jumped on a 3-seater plane, would you believe, to fly from Newcastle to the Gold Coast. We had to play the Gold Coast on the Sunday up here at the Seagull Stadium. So we flew up on this little 3-seater. I think it took us 2 or 3 hours, and MG being the jokester, although he's trying to rock the plane and just do all sorts of...
Not funny, Mark.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't funny at the time, put it that way, but that's MG all over.
Yeah.
We played, ended up playing the Gold Coast on the Sunday, and again, things was just in my zone at that weekend. I just, I had a good game again. We had a really big win, and they picked the State of Origin team that night, and we were waiting at the airport to go home, and Ross Gigg, who was the secretary or the football manager at the time, he come and grabbed me at the airport, and he said, "Carty, you've been selected in the Origin team," and that was an absolute pipe dream for me. To make the City side was the proudest moment of my football career. I've spent years watching City Country games. Over the years, Dad took me down to the Sydney Cricket Ground on occasions to watch it, and that was just the ultimate. To make a representative team. It was huge in them days. And I looked at Giggy and I thought, mate, this is not funny if you're joking. You don't do that to me. And I didn't believe him at all. I just didn't think it possible to play City first off the bench and then gets picked in a State of Origin team. Just unheard of. And then I got paged over at the airport. They paged me to come and had a phone call. So I went and took the phone call. It was my dad, and he said, you've made the Origin team, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I genuinely thought they were winding me up. It wasn't like a wind up and saying, well, I actually had, but I'm saying it's a wind up. I was totally gobsmacked when Dad told me that I I was in the Origin team. So yeah, found out at Gold Coast Airport after the Seagulls game, and yeah, just the feel. Yeah, it was just enormous. I was once I made the city team, I could have retired comfortably. Happy that I'd done it, and then to go another level, it was really surreal.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Were you used a prop in the '89 Origin series?
Yeah, I was. I was on the bench initially, and somebody pulled out, and Jack said, "No, we're going with this. We're not bringing someone in over the top. We're going with the 17 that's picked. So you're going into the team, and we'll bring someone else and put them in on the bench." So it was daunting. I'd never played prop, and I was. And there was, I think, from memory, 6 or 7 of us making our debut. We were thrown to the wolves a little bit, but a great experience. It's true what they say. It was a different preparation for Origin that we had under Jack. Was more stay at home in your own bed. The history of Origin is about getting together in camp and getting to know each other and trying to build 17 guys that want to die for each other in 10 days. So Jack was a little bit different. He wanted you to be at home in your own bed, come together. I think a couple of days before the game, flew to Brisbane, and we ran out in the field. And mate, I'd never forget. Like, it was just seriously like getting hit by a cyclone. The noise of the crowd. It was the old Lang Park. You had to walk in through the bar to get to the dressing sheds.
That would have been brutal in itself.
It was. Then go up Caxton Street, and they were throwing things at the bus, and the bus couldn't get through, and they were banging on the windows and doors, and going through the club was the bit I remember most. You walk through the actual bar at the Lang Park, and it was humming, and they'd been there all afternoon, and just the faces, and it wasn't a G up hate, it was genuine hate. They wanted to kill you, and it continued when we went on the field. The roar, the buzz, and I'd never played in a game that was that intense. I've got to admit, I was prepared for a tough game and the toughest game I'd ever played, but I just wasn't prepared for what they threw at us that night. It was different, it was a different era. And in them days, it wasn't, you weren't as structured, you didn't have your left and your right second rower and your middle core of forwards. You worked with each other, if someone needed a spell, you worked into the middle of the field, it was more. And Origin in itself is it's survival. It really is just survival, and that was. I don't think in some regards that's changed since the first Origin game.
Through this period, you'd formed the most intimidating second row in the game. Mark Geyer was your partner in crime. Could anyone actually control MG, or did anyone actually try?
No, when the switch got flicked, there's absolutely no control on MG in them days. No, that's what made him the player he was. He was as skillful as any back row going around. He could offload, he could break the line, he could pass the ball pre-line. But the thing he had going for him, he was just intimidating. I remember some games playing with him where you could actually just sit back and watch the fear in the eyes of the other team and just watch him go away. And it was the best feeling, because for whatever reason he was in a bad mood, he just took it out on the opposition. And I generally saw sides just in fear of him. He was on seek and destroy. I'd be just sitting back, sooling him on and picking up the crumbs.
Could you egg him on and get him going?
You had to be careful, because he's got no filter. So you saw that Origin game. I watched it before the last, I think during the week, of that last Origin, and he was just on a mission that day. We were under pressure that game. We had to win. We lost the first one. We were favourites, and he just took it upon himself to put fear into the opposition side. But Queensland weren't a side that you could intimidate easily. They just kept coming, but he just kept coming as well. That's why there was so much fireworks in that game.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that night? It was Game 2, 1991, MG versus the King, MG versus the team, and almost MG versus the state in 80 minutes.
It was great theatre. I think, Jim, when you're watching a game, you walk away thinking, that was a great game. But I think that one, that's lasted the test of time because it probably really was the last game that could have been played in the 60s and 70s. That game, it was brutal, and again, it came down to a goal kick a minute before full time.
I still feel sorry for Mick O'Connor on the wrong side of the field for a right footer in the pouring rain under all that pressure. And he's almost a side note in history because everyone talks about MG and the King.
And the condition of that ground was something you had to be there to believe it. It absolutely pelted down in buckets and sheets of rain, like constantly for the whole game. And the field, like the fields these days handle it, but them days it was a mud. There was no grass on the field, so it was all mud. Yeah. There was waterline on the ground. How he kicked that goal, how he got the distance of it, because I think it was the old ball too.
Old leather ball.
Would have been like a brick off the boot, and he nailed it. But I think that just added to the theatre of that game. It's
not politically correct to say yes, but do you miss that type of footy, that confrontation, that emotion? I do.
Oh, definitely, mate. The fact that and I think anyone our era will remember that Origin game forever. I think the fact that we're talking about it now, and I can remember it like it did happen yesterday, it's as a player, it's great to be involved with after it's over, but because it was so brutal. But and then got to remember we had game 3 after that as well, which was like you can imagine the build up for that game after
huge.
What happened in the game 2.
As a ball-playing second rower and one with such size, I don't think we'd seen something or a completer package as like you before. Where did the offload and the pass come from? Was it natural? Was it worked on constantly? Were you constantly trying to figure out how to perfect it, or did it just happen?
A little bit of everything, mate. I know we used to. Seriously, we used to play in the backyard till from school finish till mum called us in, probably on dark or and we had a pretty good sized yard, so all the neighbourhood kids used to come around, and I was a massive Arthur Beetson fan, so I suppose I was sort of 10ish, when Arthur was at his best, and so he was he had he was known for his offload.
Yep.
I think, I always had coaches who encouraged me. Even when
it's important.
Yeah, even when things didn't go so well, with an offload, you can look, especially now, if someone drops a ball, if you put 2 offloads away. Sorry, if you put 2 offloads down and they're ordinary passes, the crowd would be wanting to kick you off, and the coach would probably yank you off the field.
If the guy catches them, you look like a genius.
Oh, you're a superstar.
It's a huge risk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we have become a bit like NFL in that way. Yeah. In that, everything's about possession. But I always had coaches, even through my junior years. Ball security wasn't a term then. It wasn't. I don't think anyone even kept count. Definitely at junior level. And when I got to grade. I had Graham Murray was a coach who really encouraged that style of play. Ron Willie was the big one. He just told me to go out and offload the ball. He didn't
free
care.
rein. And that's nice. Yeah.
And Phil Gould gave me some tools to put myself in a position to be able to create offloads as well. Yep. He just made me think about my game a little bit more, and that created as I say, the position to come up with some more offloads.
We hope you're enjoying John Cartwright, Penrith Pure. In part 2, we talk Gus Gould, the 1991 Premiership, and the emotion of a club that went into self-destruct. Before you go, we'd love a 5-star rating and review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. It helps us with the search engines as we look to expand the podcast. We hope you come back soon, legends. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, John Cartwright, Penrith Pure. In part 1, the early years, the family history at Penrith, in a debut he didn't see coming. The story continues. We often talk about genes in sporting families. It amazes me, astonishes me. Your son Jed, your nephew Bryce have almost identical characteristics in their footy game. Not as good, I know, but still very impressive. Can you see it?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the things you pick up as a footballer, especially when you're young, you pick up by watching. You know, like, I'll never forget my son running down a street one day doing Benji Marshall steps on telegraph poles, you know, and I thought the only possible place he can see that or learn that is watching Benji do it on the TV, you know, and I thought about it a bit more, and it's true, you know, we probably as coaches we try to think that we taught the players these things, but I think it's, you know, if you really love something and you watch it, you go out and practice it and practice it and practice it, and then it becomes second nature. So a lot of the young kids, a lot of the young guys these days don't watch a lot of footy because they're saturated with it, you know, so they don't necessarily watch. You know, I remember talking to sides as a coach saying, boys, you watch, you know, did you watch the game last night? Did you see, you know, the referees are on to something? Probably 3 or 4 guys might put their hand up and say, yeah, I watched it. The rest were, you know, so that sort of amazes me because I know, like, I was glued to it. I couldn't get enough of it.
To be fair, though, when we were growing up, there was only 2 games on TV a week. Now there's 8.
You're right. We were starved of it, you know, and it was, you know, I always went to Penrith Park when I could go. But you're dead right. There wasn't the exposure and there wasn't the opportunity to watch it as it was.
I still watch all 8 every weekend. I can never get enough. I tell the missus it's for work. We'll rewind a little back to 90 and 91, the grand finals, both against Canberra. Canberra won 90, Penrith won 91. What stands out on the day, or day and night as it was?
The 1990 game, it was a game where we were a chance to win. Yeah, they were a champion side. They'd done it before, and when things got close, they just kept pulling away from us. They won. Ricky Stewart's kicking game was unbelievable. The thing I remember about that game was that the reserve grade went to extra time, and they didn't cater for the extra time for a 3 o'clock kickoff. So all of a sudden, the first grade, it wouldn't happen now, but the first grade game was put back to like 3:25 or something, you know. So we're in the shed, all of us playing our first grand final, you know, nervous as hell, and 3 o'clock come and they said, oh, look, you know, the game's not going to kick off till 3:25, you know, and there were, you know, it was a day where a lot of guys were full of, you know, they were full of adrenaline, and it was a time when, you know, the guys used to get real animated about just before kickoff, you know. So 3 o'clock comes and we're in a circle just ready to kill, you know, and then you knock on the door and no, we've got extra time in the game. And so they still went on with they finished the game, then they went on with the entertainment, and we ran out at 3:25. It was the same for both teams, but it was just something that stuck in my memory. I remember I went for a wander out the dressing sheds, and I heard some guys talking behind the door, and I opened up the door, and it was the band. The band had been put back as well, so they were in there just sitting back, singing a few tunes, and they just asked me to join in. I can't think who not really sure who the band was. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, so I just went in there and sat with them for a while they just practiced a few of their tunes without the instruments, and it was...
Did you join in and never sing, or just sat there?
No, I just sat there and watched it. It relaxed me. It just made me forget about what I was going to do for the next 25 minutes.
What about 91? That's a life changer.
Yeah, it's true to a point that you can win your first grand final. There's no doubt about that. Yep. But I think if you've played one and you're lucky enough to get to the next one, I think it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah,
I think you're way better prepared. I know for myself, I was way calmer. The whole group was way calmer. Yep. You know, Gus was a he was a general at preparing sides to get them at their peak right at the right time. And I think that year he typified that year. You know, we were the best side all year. We had a little form slump towards the back end of the year. I think that was designed. You know, he brought Royce Simmons back into the side, who'd been playing reserve grade, and the whole town got a buzz out of that. You know, just And I'm 100% sure it was all planned.
Yep.
Royce come in and played the last 4 or 5 games. Should have got man of the match in the grand final.
Yeah, I agree.
Gus just, if it was like a Bart Cummings performance, I suppose he just played pulled the strings and got it all together at the right time.
Gus is Gus. Gus is polarising. People that know him have an opinion about him when they don't know the truth. He can be the loveliest, most genuine man you've ever met, and he can walk past you the next day and not acknowledge you. He's a different one.
He certainly is. I used to live next door to him for a fair period of time when I was playing. Yeah, when he was coaching, I was playing at Penrith, and you treat people how they treat you, and he was so good for me personally. I don't think I would have ever achieved what I did in the game without him. Certainly had some. You don't go through a footy career without having some tough times. You personally, and Gus was, he lifted me on more than one occasion when I was probably thinking about doing other things.
Yep.
And to this day, through my coaching through the rest of my playing career, through my coaching career at the Titans, to Jed playing at Penrith, he's always sent me. He's not the. Let's put it this way: he's never going to be your best mate and have a beer with him every afternoon.
Yeah.
But I know Gus, and I know what I get, and I know if I needed a favour, or if I needed whatever I needed tomorrow, he'd go out of his way to get it for me. Yeah.
I agree. 91. How special was it to you? But more importantly, to the entire family, considering the association with the club. What did it mean?
Well, what it means, it's still so important to me to this day that I was able to be a part of the first Premiership team at Penrith. Dad fought really hard to get and Dad never really spoke about it much. I probably picked up more off Mum than I did Dad about the journey to get there, But the things that he did, and again, going back to the 40s, and he got himself back on the board in the 90s as well. So he had a genuine love for the club, but he had a genuine love for the area. Not many people knew that the reason Dad wanted to get Penrith into the New South Wales Rugby League at the time was that he thought people looked down on people from the West. It was
wow.
And
so it almost wasn't about football alone.
No,
it
was more.
Community.
He loved. We grew up in St Mary's. He was born and bred in Richmond, but moved to Penrith as a young fella. Then, when he got married and had a family, he moved to St Mary's, and he just hated the fact that he thought people looked down on people from the West, and he thought the best way we can show what we're capable of and what the area is capable of is get a team in the New South Wales Rugby League, and he always had a background in rugby league, so it was just a natural progression for him. And Dad was a really, really determined man. He wouldn't. I never saw him back away from anything, and he was the fight to get the team into the competition took him a long time, and he wasn't on his own. He had a lot of help. He had counsel, but he recruited all the right people that he needed to, and he was up against it too. I think there was Cronulla who got in, and Wentworth were favourites to get in.
Yeah, when he was.
And he got it done, and it was so to be part of the side and to have him, and Mum there, it was a really special moment, mate.
You getting choked up, Cardi?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's a wonderful memory to look back on, and so fondly.
Well, it is. You probably don't realise it until you talk about it, And and just for me personally too, I never thought I'd get to that level. Penrith was a tough area to play.
Oh yes.
To make any sort of representative side. I never made a representative side my whole up until I played under 18s at Penrith. So 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, 18s, I'd never made a representative team, So I honestly thought that I would never get to. I would have been just so happy to play one third grade game at Penrith, And I kept that I think that kept me grounded because I did keep that mantra the whole way through. once I'd played a third grade game, all I wanted to do was play a second grade game. You know, and then I played a second grade game, and then all I wanted to do was play a first grade game. And so I just appreciated every step along the way.
Any elite athlete will tell you it takes more than just being physically fit to be at your best. And our friends at Galaxy Finance can have you at the top of your financial game. From home loans to investments and self-managed super funds, they provide complete solutions. Call Galaxy Finance on 1300 91 7740 and mention you heard it on Andy Raymond Unfiltered to get an obligation-free chat to see how Galaxy Finance can assist you. Because we work in the game, I feel at times we can and do take things for granted, like how important the game of footy is and the success of a footy side, how big a bearing that can have on someone's life. Like the fans, did you realise pretty quickly in 91 how special this was, A, for you guys, but in all honesty, how it completed lives in those around the community?
Just the trip back from the grand, or the lead up to the 90 grand final was enormous. You know, and I know that the following year Gus pulled right back on that. It was, you know, it was almost like a celebration the year we made it. So he pulled right back on that. But the trip back from the footy stadium to Penrith in 91 was, you know, I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again.
Amazing.
They lined the freeway from Blacktown. The closer we got to Penrith, the wider there's people are standing on the expressway with cars going past at 120k an hour, and they're pushing up close to just to see the bus as it went past, you know. And we had to take a back street because there was too many. It was dangerous, too many people, and then the word got out, and then they were lining that street. And when we got to the club, it was just a sea of people. You know, you couldn't see a spot of grass anywhere. It was just a sea of people. I'm not. I think they said there was 100,000 people within the club, and on because Penrith League Club's enormous. Like they've got the surrounds. It goes for acres and acres, and there wasn't a spare bit of grass. It was just. I think it had to do what sort of Dad said. It, you know, it just sort of it put Penrith on the map. You know, people didn't look down on us anymore.
Mal said in '89, Canberra grew a soul. The city grew a soul because the team won. I can see the same type of analogy with Penrith, as the positivity that comes out of winning a competition. Mate, not interested in negativity or the blame game either. That's for another interview and another podcast. It happened. The club basically imploded in the months after the Premiership. How hard, how emotional?
Yeah, that was horrible, mate. I think we all thought that we were going to go on we had enough talent in the team and enough talent coming through. I think we'd made the reserve grade grand final the 2 years as well. So we had a lot of talent coming through. We had depth. We had the coach. You know, we had the experience. So I think we all thought that we were, you know, if we didn't win another one, we were going to really push hard over the next 3 or 4 years, which, you know, we were all at good ages to do so. Yeah. You know, just through circumstance, mate, we probably didn't, all of us, you know, we didn't handle the wins, you know, so well. I'm pretty sure we didn't come back and train as hard as what we did those previous 2 years. And, you know, we had the biggest thing that happened that really hurt the town and hurt the club was young Ben's accident. Yep. You know, that Ben was the life of the club. He was a little smarty pants. He always had a smile on his face. He was everyone's friend, and to lose him the way that we did, it just left everyone. You just scratch your head, you know. A boy that young had his whole life in front of him. To lose him like that was just such a tragedy, you know, for everyone involved, and it was tough to sort of get your head around football after that. Yeah, football didn't mean as much all of a sudden. It were tough times. You were also named club captain. A very special honour, but in very difficult circumstances. Was it a boyhood dream fulfilled, or was it, I don't need this? Again, definitely, because I was able to captain. I think I captained for 4 or 5 years after that. So at the time, it didn't mean a lot, mate. No, it was just the circumstances of it. It was, like I said, you know, Ben was. he was my younger brother's age. They grew up together. They were good mates. It was, we had a couple of good wins after that year, and they were probably just all based on emotion, But at some point, you can't keep playing on emotion. You end up falling off the cliff, and that's what happened. And I think by the end of that year, we all needed a good break.
Rewinding again, 1990, you were selected for the Kangaroo Tour. That was what every player dreamt of achieving. They were old school tours, about 12 weeks in length. Is that an experience you look back on fondly?
Yeah, well,
You're smiling like a guilty 19-year-old.
Hey, that was the absolute ultimate. I do remember sitting up and watching, test matches as they were on around midnight them days. So for a young, you always got mum and dad let you stay up and watch. And I remember sitting up and watching test matches and remembering the crowds and, and as you start to play, Royce had been on one in 86 and, he just talked about what a fantastic time that they had. And, 3 months away it wasn't professional then, so to go away for 3 months to play football with a group of guys, was apart from what you'd heard about it was just, it was something that every footballer wanted to do. It's such a shame that we're not able to do them as we could back then. But look, I wouldn't have done half the things that I've done. Coaching wise, I got to know a lot of players. Kevy's was on that tour, and I've become good friends with Kevy, and I'm up there coaching in Brisbane now. So just the friendships. I'm still great mates with Dave Gillespie, with Ricky Stewart, with Alfie Langer, with Chris Johns. All because of those tours. So it was everything that I thought it would be and more. In
speaking with Mal, Ricky and Laurie, who we've previously done Legend Series interviews with, they all say to a man, it was about footy, but it was about growing, learning and maturing as a bloke. Do you agree?
Yeah, it was. When you look at it, you're away not only with we take away the 3 months away and you're playing football and having fun. You're with 28 of the best players in the game.
Oh yeah.
And so the chance to you're learning without realising it.
Yep.
If I was able to do it again, I'd probably have a little bit different approach. I was at like a kid in a lolly shop, and I just looked around and all these great players around me. I just thought all I had to do was just do my job and everything else would fall into place. But, I probably would have taken a little bit different attitude as far as that's concerned, but you only learn that through experience.
52% footy, 48% beer drinking and misbehaving. Would have you swapped that round, you reckon?
I don't know if that's the right percentage. Might be a little bit higher, I think. Might be 60-40.
I love it. Mate, 11 years of first grade, then a run of injuries. Super League's arrival came, and I'm assuming for you a level of frustration as well. In 97, you moved to the UK to play with Salford. Right move?
It was at the time, mate. I from about 92, so 93 to when I finished at Penrith, I don't think I went a year without having a major injury.
Yeah.
I had 3 shoulder reconstructions. I had an ankle reconstruction. So there was 4 years I didn't give the club the service that they need, that I wanted to give and that I needed to give. I was at the other side of 30. My best footy was behind me, and I didn't want to leave Penrith on a bad note, So I had another year to go, and I spoke. Royce was the coach, and Royce, he's one of my best mates. And I said, we had a good talk, a heart-to-heart talk, and we sort of, at the end of that meeting, I decided it was in my best interest and the club's best interest that I pursued a role overseas. And I'm so glad that I did, because I had a great experience over there. I enjoyed I had another I broke my arm over there, so the run of injuries continued, but I got a fair whack of games in over there, and we had a couple of good wins, and I made some great mates and really had a good time.
A highlight. Is it hard to look back and nominate just one from a decorated career?
It is. Well, it is and it isn't. There was I think the highlight in general is just the times that you had, from I love the memories of when I first started and we had 3 grades. So you got about 60 guys running around at training on a Tuesday and a Thursday. You know, you pity the poor coaches in them days. There's probably only 2 or 3 coaches. You know, and they're trying to look after 60 guys who are just pretty much there wanting to play footy with their mates. You know, and having fun. And but you know, as far as results, mate, the ultimate is a grand final. You know. It's pretty easy to put that above everything because you do it with your mates. You know, you do rep footy, you get sort of thrown in and you become friends, and it's more about an achievement when you do something with a rep jumper. But I think when you win a grand final with your mates, it just goes to another level.
Any regrets? What would you change?
I would change my attitude, if anything. I always, and I try to talk to Jed about this, and I didn't demand enough of myself. I said to you earlier that I was just happy to play a 3rd grade game, then I was happy just to play a 2nd grade game, and so on. And then I went, to New South Wales, and I thought, well, I've played one game I'm so happy that I've done it. I certainly would be more hungry in there. I think it come back from, I suppose, my upbringing and as I say, just the attitude that I had when I got it. I never expected it, So, and I never, every level I went, I never expected to achieve it. So, it's sort of, if I did have my time again, I certainly would attack every level that I got to, a little bit differently.
The coaching career is a story for another day. I believe you changed the way forwards play and you left a huge imprint on the game of rugby league as a player. John Cartwright, you, sir, are a legend.
Oh, thank you very much, Andy. It's been fun.
We hope you enjoyed John Cartwright, Penrith Pure. The Weekly Wodge arrives Thursday and The Blast on Saturday. Our next Legends Series interview next week, Kevin Campion. We hope you come back soon. Legends